Welcome back to Faithfully Feminist, a space for women who long to live faithful lives in a world that often asks us to be less. This season, we've met women who waited, who wept, and who stayed. And today, we meet a woman who fought. A woman often remembered for her sword, but who was far more dangerous because of her faith. She was a teenager, a mystic, a soldier, and most of all, a saint. Today, we're talking about Saint Joan of Arc. Who was Joan? Joan of Arc was born in 1412 in a small village called Domremy in France. She was a peasant girl, uneducated, devout, living in a country at war. France and England were in the middle of the 100 Years' War, and Joan's world was full of violence, confusion, and fear. At the age of 13, she began hearing voices, what she later called her council. Saints Michael, Catherine, and Margaret spoke to her. They told her that God had a mission for Joan, to drive out the English and to crown Charles VII as the rightful king of France. Imagine that. You're a teenage girl in a patriarchal society, illiterate, unknown, and you believe God is calling you to lead an army. And instead of shrinking back, like anyone would, Joan said yes. At 17, Joan convinced a local commander to send her to the royal court. After intense scrutiny, the king, Charles, allowed her to lead troops in the besieged city of Orleans. Clad in armor, carrying a banner, not a sword, Joan became a symbol of divine favor. Under her leadership, France began to win battles they had long been losing. She wasn't just a mascot. She strategized, negotiated truces, and constantly called her soldiers to repentance and prayer. She insisted they confess before battle, that they honor the church in the midst of war. To Joan, this was not about politics. It was about obedience unto God. It's easy to make Joan a figure of war, but her true power was not in combat. It was in listening. Joan's strength came from her deep, unwavering trust in God, from her radical attentiveness to the voice of the Spirit. She was young, yes, of course, but she knew the difference between human ambition and divine call, and she obeyed, even when she was mocked, even when she was wounded, and even when the voices grew silent. Eventually, Joan was captured by the Burgundians, French allies of the English. She was sold to her enemies, put on trial for heresy, and imprisoned. The church, at least, the men who ran it, had turned on her. They interrogated her relentlessly, trying to trap her in theological error. One of the charges? Wearing men's clothing. But what they couldn't bear was not her clothing, or even her visions. It was her freedom, her authority, her refusal to submit to their idea of what a woman should be. At just 19 years old, Joan was condemned and burned at the stake. As the flames rose, she cried out, "Hold the cross high, so I may see it through the flames." So, what does Joan offer us today? She offers us courage, not just in battle, but in believing what God has placed upon your heart. She reminds us that youth is not a weakness, that femininity is not fragility, and that sometimes following Christ means standing alone. She challenges us to ask, what voices am I listening to? What is God calling me to do, even if it scares me? Am I willing to follow truth, even when it costs me? Joan was canonized in 1920, nearly 500 years after her death. Today, she is one of the patron saints of France, of soldiers, and beautifully of all, of those who are ridiculed for their faith. Joan's story isn't just about war. It is about holy defiance. It's about listening when the world says be quiet, about rising when the world says sit down. She didn't seek power, she didn't seek glory. Joan sought God's will and followed it wherever it led. Her femininity was not erased by her armor, it was fulfilled by her obedience. She shows us that the feminine vocation is vast. It includes warriors, mystics, mothers, martyrs, and above all else, it includes saints. So, today, let Joan ask you, what is the fire within you? What truth do you need to follow, even if no one else sees it yet? And will you, like her, trust God enough to obey? Thank you, as always, for joining me today on Faithfully Feminist. If St. Joan's story stirred something within you, share this episode with someone who needs courage, someone standing at the edge of a hard decision, someone wondering if they can really trust God's voice. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to listen. Until next time,